since the American Indian hasn't been able to hear his voice heard or have his voice heard anywhere in the history of the United States, uh, I felt that it was a marvelous opportunity for an Indian to be able to voice his opinion to 85 million people. But I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. What the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian, American Indian, American Indian, American Indian.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 25th RNCI Red Nation International Film Festival. Today, we're going to be sharing our voices with extraordinary Indigenous women and industry professionals for our Native Women Right, the conversation series, Why We Wear Red. But before I introduce everyone, I'd like to share with you this year's virtual festival lineup. Please visit rednationff.com for all 16 festival events and our 500 films, 73 documentaries, 35 films directed by women, 12 student films, and 10 experimental. We have our Red Nation Celebration Award ceremony, but we just got news as we were getting ready for this show. We're changing the date to November 29th, the last Sunday of the month. So just letting you know, that's what's going to happen with that. And our next event is our fundraiser, which it will be changed, that date will be changed to December 5th. And that concert series the lineup is extraordinary. We have Joe Walsh and Jennifer Warnes and Joanne Shenandoah and Corey Morton and Crystal Lightning and MC Red Cloud and Hook Havera, and I'll be singing. I haven't sang for years. I'll be singing, and Bruce Sugar and Richard T. Bear. I mean, the lineup is just amazing. We're gonna rock the world with music. Has the power to bring us all together, and it's a fundraiser to keep our year-round programs going and living for the next 25 years. So Red Nation Celebration Institute is creating systemic change through the arts and media. The first and largest global Native woman-led enterprise, founded in 1995 in Santa Fe, New Mexico during Indian Market. Red Nation Celebration Institute is the longest standing American Indian and Indigenous media arts and cultural nonprofit based in Los Angeles. RNCI, the authentic voice of American Indian and Indigenous nations, increases visibility of independent filmmakers, media artists, contemporary and traditional performing arts of diverse disciplines, and content creators, amplifying cinematic excellence in creating systemic change through the arts, with an emphasis on initiatives for Native women, girls, youth, in media, platforms, and educational institutions. RNCI is dedicated to changing the narrative about Native peoples on a global scale. Our RNCI Board of Directors has built the Institute to cast light on voices, stories, contributions, and assets of contemporary Native peoples and replacing dangerous stereotypes that Native peoples face in media and academia, with a 25-year history of cohesive research, informed strategies, groundbreaking initiatives through oh God, I'm so excited about this, through cinematic excellence, media, and strong focus on partners. You have to understand, I'm seeing all these gorgeous, talented women I'm going to introduce you to, and it's just gorgeous. So much beauty here today. Okay, so here we go. Please help me welcome Deborah. And Deborah, please forgive me, help me pronounce your last name.
Gilels.
Gilels. Gilels?
Gilels, right.
Okay. Deborah has run a successful PR media consulting company for the past 15 years, assisting writers, filmmakers, and actors launch their careers in the entertainment industry, promote feature films, shorts, and documentaries by way of public relations, marketing, distribution, and project development, and will be our guest host for the show today. Welcome. Welcome, Deb.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
We're very excited to have you here too.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Our next guest is Shari Belafonte. She is an actor, writer, singer, model, and currently on a series regular on The Morning Show and Sistas. And Shari is an RNCI board member. Welcome, Shari.
So glad to be here. You know that. Luckily, you got me on a day that I'm not working.
Exactly. And our next guest is Josefina Lopez. She's an extraordinary filmmaker, change maker. She's a writer, director, producer, performer, a Chicana playwright, perhaps best known as the author of the play Real Women Have Curves, which changed a whole lot of things in Hollywood. Lopez is also the founding artistic director of the Casa 0101 Theater, located in Boyle Heights, where my family, you know, my cousin Edward R. Roybal, Congressman Edward R. Roybal, lived, which began in 2000, her Casa 0101 Theater. Our next guest is Michelle Shenandoah, and Michelle is the co-founder and owner of Indigenous Concepts Counseling, and she's also producer of 3 short films that are screening at our festival this month of November. And also I'm a relative of the Haudenosaunee Nation, and she is my relative. So welcome, Michelle. Yay.
No, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, Janelle, for having us all on this evening.
Our next guest is Jennifer. Jennifer, you're going to have to help me. Please forgive. To say your last name is so gorgeous. Let's see.
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
Podemsky.
It's so gorgeous. We're not allowed-
Podemsky. Okay, Jennifer Podemsky is an actor, writer, producer, director, and CEO of Red Cloud Studios, Inc. And I have been wanting to work with Jennifer for many years. I adore her, and she's a phenomenal leader up in Canada, and she's a rock star up there. So,
Well, thank you.
Yeah, she's helping change the narrative up there for our Native women.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here on this panel. I'm so happy to be invited and to finally be able to do something together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about, you know, being women of power of women in this show business, in this industry, and some of the trials and tribulations that we go through, and how we move through that no matter what, and how we're on the other side of the spectrum, and how we all rise together, and women supporting women, and how we support each other, you know, in this industry, and as well as keeping the ladder down for the next generation to be empowered by the work that we're doing. So I want to start off with, and I'm probably, Frank, going to go off. Frank is our tech behind the scenes. I might go off script, so hang in there with me. So, I'd like to go with, I'd like to, you know what, Sherry, I'd like to start with you.
Okay.
And first I'd like to know, what is it like to be working on two very powerful shows right now on cable, right? And what that experience is for you as a woman of color.
Well, first of all, I want to say again, thank you for having me on. And as you of course know, I'm on the board. I'm excited about being on the board as well. I'm very lucky. You know, there have been many years just by being in the entertainment industry. There are ups, there are downs, there are times when you're working, there'll be years, months when you're not working. So you have to keep yourself fresh and writing and being involved. Still go out for auditions, do a lot of reading, actually a lot of binge watching. You know, there's all these elements that take place when you're in the entertainment industry. And one of the things that I try to remind people is that, you know, when you're on camera talent, because, you know, I do both. I'm behind the camera as well as on the camera. But when you're on camera, your message is one of direct contact with the audience. I always say that if you're doing something else, if you're a writer, if you're a dentist, if you're always once removed from the product, from the factory, from the product that you're delivering. But when you're an actor, you are the product. So sometimes it's very personal what you're doing. Sometimes, you know, you can get in trouble with what you're doing. Trust me, I've been there too. But at the tender age of 65, because I'm now 66, I was very, very lucky after not having worked on camera for a number of years. I'd done bits and pieces, but really not really worked, to land both the Project Apple TV show, The Morning Show, which is starring Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, Steve Carell, Nestor Carbonell. It's a great cast. And I have a very small part on that, but I'm very excited about that. And that's on Apple TV. And the other one was going into audition for Tyler Perry for Sisters, which is a very, you know, hot ticket right now, because another long story short, he was one of the few people that was able to go back and shoot during this pandemic because he owns his own studios in Atlanta. So I'm not going to be on this season, but he swears that my character is not dead yet.
Well, that's a good thing.
You know, I went from not working to suddenly working and having to get on the red eye to go to Atlanta, learning my lines to shoot when I got to Atlanta the second I got off the plane, because Tyler actually shoots almost like a daytime show. He shoots 120 pages a day, as opposed to a 1 hour drama like the one that I'm doing for Apple. You know, we'll shoot maybe, if we're lucky, 3 pages a day. And they'll take weeks to put together an episode of the morning show, because depending on who the talent is and what their availability is, because, you know, Jennifer and certainly Reese work nonstop all the time. So we're always working around their schedule. But I find myself very lucky that I am back in front of the camera and still being able to develop projects behind the camera as well. And what's good about being in front of the camera is that it reminds people that you're not dead yet, you know, because that often happens, that when people, I can't tell you how many emails or fan letters I've gotten that said, when are you going to be back on TV? And oftentimes you go, as soon as I land a gig. It's not like you just go off into a hole and crawl, you know, crawl off to a hole and die somewhere. It's a matter of the industry recycling itself and saying, you know, we haven't seen her in a while. Let's get her back in to read this. I also feel like I finally grew into who I'm supposed to be, which is a little old lady, as opposed to, you know, the industry itself always pegs you as something. I was an ingenue when I did hotel 30, 40 years ago. And for some reason, the entertainment industry always likes to think that that's who you are. So when they see you and they go, well, she's not 27 anymore. I was like, well, of course I'm not 27 anymore. And I have no problem being 66. But we have an industry that's very ageist. It's very involved with ageism. I think that we're turning the curve right now on that. I think people, wonderful people like Meryl Streep have been able to drag that all the way through. You look at somebody like Cloris Leachman, who was old when she was 20. So we have a lot of talented actresses that have managed to ride that wave. And now I think have opened up the door and made people realize that it's okay for you to hire an older woman. And I think it's even better that women themselves are coming into the reality that they don't have to look young anymore. That they don't have to look as young as they were 30 years before, that they can kind of, wend their way into being older. So luckily I'm playing an older person.
Okay, so with that said, it's like, this is Native women right?
Right.
So women of color, right? And we need to be not only writing our own stories, books, screenplays, press releases, everything.
Shopping lists.
Yeah. I want to get into that a little bit later, but we're gonna move on and then come back and just
Well, we also have let me just step in. We now have audiences. First of all, women themselves are coming to the realization that they have power. There was such a long time that we just really assumed we were always second class. So women themselves are saying, no, we're powerful. We want to see more stories about us.
Right.
And now the narrative is turning around. There have been moments, lots of little shows that started. Lifetime television has always kind of geared towards women, but I think we're so spread out now. It's not just ABC, NBC, and CBS. Fox came into the picture, and then cable came into the picture, and now the internet is coming into the picture. There's so many different markets that we can we can show what we've written. We can show what we've directed. People are now stepping up to the plate, and there's so many places that need content. So is now that we have a place, we have a platform where we can display our abilities to make movies behind the camera as well as in front of the camera.
One of them being Red Nation Television Network. So all of you have a seat at this table. If you have films that you'd like to submit, we will stream it. We were before Hulu or Netflix, before anyone was really online streaming. So I encourage you to check into that. So we're going to move on to Deborah, and Deborah has a few questions for our other guests.
I'm going to start with, how about Josephina?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay. I have to just be honest with you, like some of my ancestors lived near Brooklyn and Soto. So I have Boyle Heights in my genes as well. So I wanted to ask you, when did you discover your love of writing and sense of mission as a playwright? How did that happen for you?
I was very lucky that when I was 5 years old, I knew I was born to be a writer. So I started writing before I could even write. At 5 years old, I started telling a story about a feminist aunt who was building her own home, and my parents thought that was so cute. But I started to write plays when I was 17. And I quickly understood that, as Latinos, as people of color, as Indigenous women, that we were invisible, we were considered aliens, and that I had to own my humanity, and that I had to fight for my humanity with my stories. So I started to write plays. And the reason I started to write plays is because I was an actress, and I understood that as a Latina actress, as a woman of color, that I was only going to get to play maids, and that I had to accept that I was going to have to play a supporting character in a white man's story. And I was either going to be his maid or his prostitute, or, and that was it. So I had to take up writing. I put my acting career aside, and I started writing about my experience working in a sewing factory. I wrote Real Women Have Curves when I was like 19 years old. I had already written a play at 17 that was a PBS special that won many awards. And so I wrote this play. But for me, I've always been outspoken. My parents didn't believe in therapy because they just thought, oh my God, you're just crazy, and what I didn't know was that I'm empathic. Right now I'm training to be a shaman. I'm psychic. I have a lot of different abilities for healing. And I didn't know that growing up. I just thought I was going crazy. So I took up writing to save my life. And so writing has been my therapy, has been my way to express my anger. So when I was 21 years old, I got approached by Warner Brothers to turn my play into a movie. It took 11 years because, you know, they were going to put white women who were sizes 6 as fat women, and they were going to do things that Hollywood does, which is they make a size 6 a fat, that's the equivalent of a fat girl, which is like the average size is a size 16 in the US, right? And so 11 years later, the movie got made. And anyway, so how it started was that I was so angry, and I knew I didn't want to eat this anger. I knew I wanted to do something with it. I wanted to use the fuel to inspire other people. And that's what I've done.
Great. So, seeing how things are changing now and how where we've come, how do you feel towards that? And, how is your voice changing?
Well, I'm very optimistic that things hopefully are changing, because now people really are interested. Now people care. Now we don't have to convince white people that racism exists. There's plenty of videos showing like a Latina woman slapping a white woman who tells her to go back to Mexico. I feel like now people believe us. Like, okay, it took 4 years to finally get it. So I'm getting a lot more interviews. I'm getting a lot more opportunities as a screenwriter. So I'm really excited. I'm hoping that things will change. I started a theater in my community in Boyle Heights because, because of all the racism and sexism that I experienced, I wanted to give up. But instead of giving up, I decided to start a theater so that I could mentor more women. Because when your heart gets broken, the way you heal your heart is to keep it open and give to others what you wish someone would give to you. So I decided to give opportunities, and I produced over 200 plays, a lot of them by Chicanas, Latinas, women of color, at our theater company. And that's how I've kept myself in the game, because I tell people, look, after 30 years of writing and constantly getting rejected, thank God Real Women Have Curves got made. It became an award-winning film, but that's the only thing I've ever gotten produced. And I'm like, it breaks your heart that you've been doing it for 30 years. So the way you don't become a drug addict is that you become I produce theater. I become a community activist. I give back, and then people inspire me to keep going. And so I really hope that the new president and a woman of color in office, that finally people will understand that the wise woman, this archetype, finally is emerging, that now we're going to value wise women beyond the age of 30. We're going to see that women have value, that, like so many, I remember I was on a panel with male writers, and they were talking about Lupe Ontiveros, this amazing actress who nobody gave her really a lot of chances. She played 200 maids. And I said, well, you know why, she didn't have a better career, because she passed away already, is because, for men, it's like you write about women because they're useful to you. They serve something for you. But when an older woman has no purpose for you, you stop thinking about her. She doesn't exist. And I said, because women become dangerous, because we become outspoken, because we don't give a F anymore, because we're not trying to we're not trying to be a cheerleader and have people like us. We just want to exist and be real. So that's how come men don't know how to write us, because it's like, well, because you haven't seen this, because you've kept us, you're scared of us. And I think as writers, the new stories that hopefully will come out is the wise woman, the wise woman, the shamanic woman, the woman that was revered in our society, in our communities, that is needed to harmonize this planet, because it's gone to the other extreme with toxic masculinity. And it's going to take women of color, people of color, to create community to heal this planet.
It's great. Well, just so you know, and I think you'll be happy to know it, and Sherry is here to sit there with me and attest to this. I'm on the board of La Femme Film Festival, and Lupe was one of the original founders. And her son Elias is a fellow board member, and we actually gave our highest award a few weeks ago to Sherry, the Lupe Ontiveros Image Award.
Oh, wonderful.
Of course, I haven't seen it yet.
It
It hasn't been mailed to me yet. Just remind. But yeah, I was very honored to get that.
We had an award show, and definitely we always, we've had Cheryl Lee Ralph, we've had a lot of different, Nadine Velasquez that, received that award. So it's, she's very much in our hearts,
Yeah. Very honored to have gotten that too, or to get it when it comes.
Great.
Yeah, well, so growing up in this industry, for me, I thank you, Josefina. That was very, very powerful. My mom was really close with Lupe. They were in the industry together. They're around the same age, Okay, so we're gonna move on to
I can do it. It would be for Jennifer.
Okay,
So, I'm really dying to ask you this all along. So how is both your heritages, the First Nation, I don't want to pronounce it wrong, but Anishinaabe, and your Ashkenazi Jewish heritage influenced you in filmmaking and the projects you pursue?
Well, and it is Anishinaabe. That's good. It's Ojibwe up here too. I suppose that growing up with such a very deeply rich understanding of my grandfather's experience in the Holocaust, and sort of paralleling that with my own, my mother's parents, my other grandparents' experience in residential school, and the consistent systemic racism that is passed down through generations in Canada and almost ignored in a way that made me realize that we pay a lot more attention to things like the Holocaust, and which I do in my family, and absolutely completely ignore the Holocaust and the genocide that occurred here in North America, or Turtle Island. And I think as a storyteller, as I grew up, entrenched in both of my cultures, very attached to both of my, I'm not going to say they're two identities. I'm one person, I'm one human being with an expression of a desire to tell stories, for the simple reason that I come from a family where nobody before my parents was allowed to tell stories, because in Canada, the history of Indigenous silencing is so deeply embedded into our system. So Indigenous people never had an opportunity to tell their own stories from their own perspectives, to enact change, systemic change in a positive way. And I saw how people were doing that in the Jewish community. I was around real major change makers in my own family, and through my education as a Jewish kid, recognizing how you can enact systemic change for the better and combat racism and repair intergenerational trauma through storytelling. And in many ways, I believe that the narrative of erasure and putting Indigenous people in a position of otherness and worthlessness was, by design created across Canada and the US since the beginning. And I think that's the work that we're all doing now, is to repair and reclaim our rightful place in this, place that we call Turtle Island, in a way that will help everybody thrive into the future and take back those narratives. So in answer to your question, I suppose that my Jewish heritage and my Holocaust, my intergenerational Holocaust knowledge, and my grandfather being a Holocaust survivor and my grandparents being residential school survivors feed very directly into my desire to reshape narratives and combat systemic racism through stories.
No, I agree. I mean, I, grew up Jewish, and, like in the Holocaust, and most of, a lot of my, friends' parents were survivors. So, it's very, it's something that it doesn't leave you. So in terms of like, like what kind of projects, like, can you tell me a little bit, or tell us a little more, like some of the projects you guys are working on, and like what would interest you to pursue?
Well, I think, I've been doing this for about almost 30 years. I started as an actor, and for me, because of the way I look, and I was always, typecast in Native roles, and always, as Josephina said, I mean, I basically related to everything she said. It was one of two things: either I was going to be some kind of victim, prostitute, murder victim, perpetuating those kinds of narratives as an actor. Or again, you know, the joke that every Thanksgiving something pops up where you can maybe get an audition for a Native character. And one day it just became very clear to me that if I continue to participate as a performer in narratives that perpetuate violence against Indigenous people, then I'm going to be a bigger part of the problem. So for me, being a part of the solution was to open a production company, start to write my own stories, and to build capacity in the industry so that we could employ more Indigenous people, get people into unions, behind the scenes, director, producer, writer, at the table, executive level. I do drama, documentary, feature films, live events. Like, I pretty much will do anything. I have no discrimination when it comes to platforms, genres, or structures. I just want Indigenous stories to be told and to celebrate the diversity of those stories. There's not one Indigenous voice. There are hundreds and thousands of different Indigenous voices and perspectives. And it's only when platforms like this and platforms like what Michelle is doing and theaters like Josefina is doing, created, it's only when the platforms, the authentic platforms, are created to allow that expression to take place that we're really going to reshape the future. So I'll do anything. I will partner with, you know, other Indigenous people to tell stories that are that align with that mission of reclamation and rematriation, which I'm sure Michelle will speak to a little bit later.
Yeah. So, you know, Jennifer, I so relate to you on many levels because I am also Native and Jewish, and Spanish Jew. It's Sephardic Jew. Another word for that is Latina. That's a made-up thing. Anyway, we won't go into that. But you know, I for everyone out there that's listening, you know, Jennifer brought up our Holocaust. So I directed, wrote, and produced the first Holocaust short, and entered it into the Oscars 20 years ago. This September, it turned 20 years. And we've created a whole series on our television network. So you can go, there's 3 episodes already in the can, and you can go watch it right now, you know, replay those on rednationtv.com. So there's a lot of, you know, what's the word for that, Michelle? You have a good word for that, for bringing together. Yeah, women, stories, bringing together our elements, bringing together unity, unifying, you know. Anyway, I'm going to introduce Michelle Shenandoah.
And on that note, so Michelle.
Yeah, and on that note, let's bring in Michelle. Michelle, I just love you so much. We have, you know, I have a nephew up there in New York, you know, a Haudenosaunee nephew, bloodline there. And you know, Michelle has done such extraordinary work in Indian country. And the films that she's now producing are just very, very powerful. And there's 3 that are screening this year. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Michelle Shenandoah. And Michelle, can you just share the work that you're doing and the groundbreaking work that you're doing back east?
Sure. Thank you, Janelle. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm the founder of Rematriation Magazine, which is a digital platform for Indigenous women. And it's a multimedia storytelling platform. And the point is exactly the reason that all of us are on this call tonight, is to be able to tell stories from our voice, from our perspective, but specifically for Indigenous women. And so I named it Rematriation, meaning returning the sacred to the mother. So here back home, I work really very closely with community, with the women from our community, our leaders, including, you know, faith keepers and clan mothers. And one of the clan mothers, who is a dear sister and mentor to mine, she was using rematriation quite a lot. And so I finally said, okay, we have to get this word into the dictionary. So, you know, tell me what do you think of when you when you say rematriation. So she talked to me for about a half an hour, and I just took all kinds of notes, and I said, okay, let me call you back. And so I sat with the word and I looked at what she was talking about. And it also comes from the traditional birthing practices as well, that one of our traditional midwives from back here, from the Mohawk community, was using rematriation as a process of returning all of, the sacredness of birth and the placenta and birth cord, back into the earth. And so, taking all of these concepts and knowing that, rematriation is now a movement by which Indigenous, peoples are really getting behind. I looked at the word repatriation, which is returning a person or an object back to its original owner or country. And so looking at this word in terms of how we as Indigenous peoples, think, our cosmology, how we behave and function and move within the world. And so taking that same, concept of repatriation, but making it matrilineal or matriarchal or, related to women. And so rematriation, we came up with returning the sacred to the mother. And the great news is that you can actually Google it now, and there's a definition for it. And so that's exactly what it is. And so now that, we're living in this digital age, and especially more so now than we were, even a year ago. It feels like everybody now is, very comfortable being behind the camera. It's a very interesting time of change. And so I dreamt of Rematriation magazine about 20 years ago. And I lived in New York City. I went to law school there. I worked for a number of years. And back then everybody was reading everything in print, and you could see what people were reading. So I saw the Latina woman reading Latina magazine and the Black woman reading Ebony magazine. And I said, where's my magazine, right? And so I kept that dream alive. And so now that we're in this digital space, it's transcended beyond a print or even just a regular digital magazine. So what's happening is, community is being built around the work that we do at Rematriation. So it's really helping to, bring our stories forward, to bring our narratives forward, because there's so many damaging stereotypes, so many damaging, Hollywood narratives that are out there about Indigenous women. So how can we tell them on our own terms, but really grounded in our culture and really grounded in who we are? So I'm so excited because this year we have 3 short films. They're part of a 10-part series called Indigenous Women's Voices. And so we have 3 women who are featured in these short films. So please make sure to go check them out. But we have Santee Smith, who is Mohawk from Six Nations. She is now a chancellor. She has a dance theater. But she's now also a chancellor of a university. We have Matika Wilbur, who has a photography project and trying to capture photographs for the same reasons that we are in terms of telling narratives, but in traveling and trying to get to all of the recognized nations across the country. And then Patricia Michaels, who is a fashion designer from Taos, New Mexico. So those are all in the film festival this year. So that's a little taste of what I'm up to. And Jennifer and I have also been talking about, how can we help to support each other, across I don't even want to say it. It's across Turtle Island, right? But here we are in. We have this borders, right? These borders between us. And we're talking about even how our media becomes divided, even how our films become divided. Why is it that Indigenous film in Canada, becomes exclusive for Canada or within the United States or even within, Mexico? Why are those divisions there? Because they really shouldn't be. We're one people who are Indigenous to this land. So anyway, so that's a little bit about what Rematriation is about.
Just a note to that's true of Canadian movies in the Hollywood industry too. I did a series in Toronto for 2 years, and it was met with a little bit. There's a snobbery of California that we know how to, here in California, we know how to make movies better. We know how the tricks are done. So there's a little bit of snobbery with Canadian movies, not just within the Indigenous community. That's just true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but also in Canada, supports their Indigenous artists, and there's a lot more being done in Canada that really should all. And they're now, I know that for Trickster, as an example, is going to be on CW starting in January, which is really exciting. So that's something to look forward to, those transitions, for those things to happen, and to have platforms to encourage that we, the people, let them know that's what we want to see. That's what we want to replay and be involved in. I think that's real important, to use our voice in that way, and also to unify and partner with each other to enforce and amplify our voices to the industry. I wanted to say something to Michelle about what you said about, the placenta and the birthing. I'm excited that you brought that up, because I didn't do that with my daughter, but with my son, I planted his placenta in the earth. It was a very sacred ceremony, and it was really beautiful. And there's something to be said when you do that with the psyche of the individual. It's really, really powerful. And no way is right or wrong or good or bad. It's just a different way of doing things. But it has been a powerful experience. And so let's move on. I'm going to go back to Sherry and ask Sherry, let's get into, okay, so in January of 2018, when the Time's Up and the Me Too movement started, Red Nation, Native Women in Film, launched a call to action and a campaign. And this campaign is still very alive and well. And it's called Why We Wear Red. And we made a call out to everybody, and Michelle's organization is part of our media coalition. And we reached out to everyone across Indian country, and there was this one amazing, she's a yogi, she's Danae, she's in Arizona. And I said, put Why We Wear Red on your hand and send me pictures. So everybody was sending pictures, and she did this. And now that's become, everyone's picked up on that, which is the intent and the mission for our call to action of Why We Wear Red. And it was in 2018, 16 years before the industry network episodic television completely wrote us out of the narrative, our Native women. Before that, a lot of us made our living on episodic television. I know I did here in the States. And so, and I noticed every year would go by and there's no gigs, what's going on? So then 16 years goes by. So then when Time's Up and Me Too happened, we launched this Why We Wear Red. And we've partnered with many, many organizations, including Congresswoman Deb Haaland, on this mission and this call to action. And we do have a media coalition with that. But I'm going to start with Sherry. Your mother was in the White House Commission for Native American Affairs.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that she was Haudenosaunee. I told you she was Haudenosaunee. Her mother was Haudenosaunee and white, and her father was Cherokee and Black. And she was on the White House Commission for Native American Affairs. But oddly enough, and I think it's actually a question I wanted to ask Jennifer as well, but also to ask all of you ladies, that she lived in a society where, boy, if you think being Black was second class, Native American was even a notch below that. So she never really engaged, my family never really engaged in telling stories and embracing the Native American side of our heritage. And I think her being on the White House Commission was kind of her way of giving back, or at least trying to make peace with herself, that this was something that she kind of sequestered, kind of pressed down. I'm sorry, I broke into what you were going to ask me, but that's one of the things I wanted to get out. Because I was wondering if anybody else had experienced that, especially Jennifer said she was, dealing with a lot of Native American stories, both her Jewish side and her Native American side, that there were storytellers in her family, and there probably were many storytellers in the neighborhood. There just weren't any in mine, in terms of telling the Native American stories. It was only recently, just in the last few years, that I found out that we were Iroquois, because all my life we always hear, yeah, we're Cherokee. I was like, no, I don't really buy that. But we did hear that my grandfather was part Cherokee. So that was the part that we knew about. It wasn't until many, many years later that my aunt finally said to me, no, we're Iroquois. She said, mom's mother, her, meaning her grandmother. So my great grandmother, she said, was Iroquois. She was part of the group, she said, the Longhouse people. That's how she put it, like that. And I went, the Haudenosaunee? And she went, I think that's what it was called. And then I remembered, I had an acid flashback of when I was about 5 years old, and a great aunt on my grandmother's side, her sister, who was crazy. She was Aunt Boots. We always just kept hearing about Aunt Boots, and she was crazy. She always wore boots, even in the summertime. And she had said to me, yeah, we're Fifth Nation. And over the years, I never thought about it until later. I sort of thought, did she say Fifth Nation? But that's Canada. I knew that we weren't Canada. I knew that we were from the New York coast. And then it was finally, I put one and one together. And then when my aunt said Iroquois, then it all started to make sense. But that wasn't you were asking. You were asking about the Me Too movement. Is that that's where we're going?
I brought up your mom because I wanted to make that reference, because your mom did extraordinary work, and I wanted to honor her in that way. But also, you being a woman of color in the industry, at a young age, I'm sure that you have encountered Me Too scenarios and
many.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Do you have like one little story to share? And, because we're on a time thing.
I'll make it feel.
And I want to get to the other guests too. So
absolutely, I'll make it as short as I possibly can. Obviously, people know or may not know, Harry Belafonte is also my dad. My dad, of course, grew up being Black. Well, what people don't know is that Dad really is Irish, Scottish, Dutch, Taino Indian, and there was really a small part, I think it's 18% of his bloodline, his ancestry heritage is Nigerian. But nevertheless, we live in a society, not just in this country, but in other, not only just on Turtle Island, but in all countries, that if you were even one smidge Black, you got nailed and labeled as Black. And when I first came into the business, I tell people I was born into this business. It wasn't something that I was 18 and decided I wanted to be an actress and I wanted to hear my voice heard. I knew what the downside was early on because I saw friends of my family, friends of my parents, who just struggled through it all their lives. So I didn't come into this very blind. I came into it very cognizant of what goes down. And when I would be approached once in a while, because I was very pretty, I had magazine covers, I was young, and people thought that I was impressionable. The impression for me was, you can stick it somewhere else, dude. I am not going there. I don't have any desire to have that part that badly. I'll just do something else. So I was lucky, like I said, in that I grew up in the business. I knew the downside of it, and I never went into it blindly. And I always went into the impression that there are going to be years and years and years where I may not be able to be on camera. So being behind the camera actually was where I was supposed to start anyway. So it's always been good for me to be able to fall back on that. And in my arts and crafts, I have that too.
So,
Janelle,
yeah.
May I say something about in regards to the
Absolutely.
Me Too movement? If you remember back in 2018, actually, we had a film in the Red Nation Film Festival called An Indigenous Response to Me Too.
Yes.
And that addressed, the issue of sexual violence against Indigenous women and sort of how they come from different spaces. I guess technically it's probably all the same, but the reasons being very different versus being, in different industries and what the Me Too movement was, as that was happening, sort of how it was happening parallel, but also for different reasons for Indigenous women. So that's actually a conversation starter film that we created, and it's free online on rematriation.com. You can see that film that's on there. But it was nominated for Best Short in Red Nation Film Festival about 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, the point I was trying to make, and then we'll go on to Jennifer and Josefina. The point I was trying to make is that with women of color and our Why We Wear Red and the industry is that, and our missing and murdered Indigenous women, is there's a direct link. Because if this is not seen, that's not seen, all these gorgeous faces, if we're not seen in media, then we don't matter. It's like that, then
We're not human.
we're not human, and these predators can do whatever they want and they'll get away with it, just like the last 4 years. So with that said,
Carry a taser.
so that's why we wear red. I encourage everyone that's listening to, you have a seat at this table to get involved and be a part of the call to action along with all of us, and to move this campaign forward and have it be more heard across the world. Jennifer, would you like?
Oh my gosh, I have so much to say. Well, I think, you know, a lot of the Me Too and the campaign that you created, Why We Wear Red, and just violence against Indigenous women in general, it is also a narrative that was by design. And the reason our numbers, especially up here, and I know down in the States as well, of missing and murdered Indigenous women is a direct result of the design of the system being that way. And that happened through media, through the narrative that we are, you know, as Josefina said, you know, worthless, not human. And that's, you know, to a big part of rematriation, a big part of reclaiming storytelling and our place here in the story, in the collective story. And again, to Sherry's point, that's why our grandparents and our aunties and uncles didn't talk about that, because it was dangerous. It was dangerous to identify with the story of your identity, not just as a racial thing. It's a political problem.
Yeah.
You are a political problem. You are a threat to the state, to the country. Your identity as an Indigenous person is a general threat. So all of those things combined, whether it's missing and murdered Indigenous women, whether it's, you know, systemic racism, whether it's the way we are represented in, you know, or not represented at the table, at all tables. This is why we are doing all of this work, all of the campaigns, all of that. I think it comes back to the same answer, that it is harnessing, you know, if you could go back to your grandmother, Sherry, and say, sing that song, bring back memory, then your life might have been different.
Yeah.
You know, not to say that it was bad, but you know, to harness that part of ourselves and our identity, and to be able to tell our children that they don't have to be afraid to express who they are, and they don't have to be afraid to, you know, identify strongly and proudly as an Indigenous person. That's a political act of resistance right there.
Right. You know,
And for all of us to support them in that narrative too.
Yeah.
Josefina?
Yeah, you know, I've been writing about rape since I was 21 years old, because a lot of people may or may not know this, but Mexicans are the product of rape. I mean, it's sad to say that a Spaniard came and they raped the Indigenous women, and then a new race of people came out. So Mexicans are the product of rape. So we had to deal with this. And so I've written stories about the conquest of Mexico and how rape was used to destroy a people and to destroy us, but how our spirit still lives on, this desire to have sovereignty over our souls and to see the value in ourselves despite being seen as worthless. You know, right now I'm in Mexico, and I've done a journey where I'm visiting all these Indigenous people to reclaim this part of myself that I knew was there, you know, but now that, like, I did my ancestry DNA and it showed me how much like blood I have that's Indigenous, that now I can really claim it. And so for me, I've been writing about rape. Like, I've written so many plays about rape that I go, oh, finally people caught up. Like, finally Me Too is here. Glad you showed up because, the other thing that I wrote about, I wrote a movie for HBO that didn't get made. And it was about all the missing and murdered women in Ciudad Juarez, which they are poor indigenous Mexican women who work for the maquiladoras, the factories, the manufacture all these electrical appliances that go to the US. So I've been writing about this topic in so many ways. And it's so sad too to see, what's happening in the US with all these murdered indigenous women. It's just so much of it. But I'm glad that we're finally having this conversation, because now the consciousness is ready to talk about what is the value of women? What is the value of women's bodies beyond sexual attraction for men? So these are the new stories that are going to be emerging, I think, that we're finally going to be paying attention to, that I've devoted my life to this, So I also don't have any Me Too stories in Hollywood, because I know that, because I've been so outspoken, that I think men are afraid of me. They're like, oh, she'll cut off my dick, she'll bite it off. Like, don't even bother with her. And I'll be like, yeah, that's right, I will.
Well, I also think that they probably by now know that they shouldn't go, shouldn't try doing stuff like that.
No, but I started at 21, right?
Right.
So I never had those experiences, because I think, also when you walk with purpose and you have anger and you have this fuel, I think men just get out of your way. They're like, oh, don't fuck with her,
Well, that's what happens. So they also label you, and that I did get labeled a lot as
but
being
then that's
a
also what
bully,
happens, is that
a bitch,
they don't hire
hard
you
to work with,
Okay.
so they would just move on. Or
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so we need to claim we are dangerous, we are powerful,
Powerful, beautiful,
beautiful,
fabulous.
gorgeous, in our 60s, 40s, 50s,
Right.
20s.
That's right.
Now, if we can just get the money to make these movies.
We will.
Right.
When powerful women get together, it happens.
Perfect.
Supporting each other, it happens. It happens. Look, it happens. There's evidence all over to prove that fact.
Right.
When we come together as women and we unite and we support each other and honor each other and everything that we do, all the differences that we have, all the beauties, all the talent that we have, we're unstoppable. We're unstoppable. And it's happening. I mean, look at all of us today coming together and sharing. I'm just so grateful that all of you are here today and sharing your love and your talent and your stories and your wisdom and your power with us today and with all the audience that's watching, because we're here, we're still here, and we're still going to be here forever, because we're life givers. That's what the Creator has given us. We're life givers. And our first medicine, remember, our first medicine was that maniwaka, that sacred water in your mommy's tummy that gives life. So I just pray that we can continue on and having these conversations. And I want to thank all of you. I'm going to just wrap it up because it's a little after 4, but I want to touch on every one of you to say something positive that you want to see for yourself to happen, manifest.
Well, I have an animation project at Sony that the protagonist is a Latina who's of Mayan descent, who's a curandera, a shaman. And I really want this to be manifested because I think this is a new type of character that we haven't seen, that's someone who uses her heritage as a source of power. And I have, I'm pitching Real Women Have Curves, the TV show. And it's a modern take on my movie. And I really hope this TV show gets on the air. And I just I've been doing it for 30 years. So I have tons of projects that I hope they finally get made. Now that hopefully we see the value of women, Indigenous people of color, and how important our contributions are, and how our empathy and our compassion is not our weakness, but our superpower.
Woo! I support that.
Ditto.
Jennifer?
Well, I guess directly related to this conversation, what I would like to see for myself is I would love to have this same conversation in person one day and make
Yeah,
the group bigger and
yeah.
imagine what we might all be able to do together to work towards all of our common goals and dreams and desires to build capacity and to raise each other up and help each other achieve all of those incredible goals.
We can do it. We're doing it. We're doing it right now. It has begun. Deb?
Oh, I'm going to just speak to, the work that I do for the La Femme Festival, being a board member, because, when I first went on, the board, it was, probably 14 or 15 years ago. And, I would approach, and I did everything there, from doing all of their paneling and to getting all their, honorees, to bringing in sponsorships, and it was always like a women's festival. And then I saw it evolve to diversity and inclusion. And then I saw, like, more men taking it like seriously, instead of just sort of, oh, that's a nice women's festival. But I'd really like to see it, like all, like, maybe, all like indigenous, like all the women, all the, from every walk, every race, every what, have the same kind of, like metamorphosis, where that these are great film markets too, where people are actually, which, I did do for La Femme, like we've gotten people distribution and a lot through my company as well, but that it's, it's something that's like a serious player in the marketplace, so that it, it's so everything grows, and it's people are, being able to, like, see the value of their work on that level as well.
Well, maybe our Native Women in Film Festival that happens the week of the Oscars, maybe there's some way that La Femme, we can all partner.
Oh,
they
that
can
would be
come on
fun.
board as a partner. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Sherry, and then we're going to go end with Michelle, because
I've been working on a project forever called Cow Folks of Color, of which I've written the first script. It's about all the different Black cowboys and cowgirls that built this country, along with their Native brethren. And one in particular is primarily about the Mary Fields story. Mary Fields was a Black stagecoach driver, but there's a very important Native American group that's within the confines of it. And I want desperately to get this movie made. And I want to direct.
okay, we'll do it.
Okay.
Michelle?
Wow. Well, it's not really customary for me to ask for things for myself. So, but with that, because of the fact we're on here, and I know that this is around Hollywood and film festivals and all this greatness, I actually want to say that my husband and I have a new script up on the Blacklist. It's called Celestial Waters, and it's a modern day Indigenous love story. So for those of you who are out there listening and interested in checking out a new script, to go take a look. But my wish really actually is to have more Indigenous women walking together with clear paths before us, and walking together in healing and unity, and really creating that space for our voice, and for that healing that's needed, because the Indigenous wisdom from around the world is really what's needed right now. It's needed for humankind, but it's really needed also for our relationship with Mother Earth and how we walk as people on this planet. And so that's my wish and my dream, is to be able to see that Indigenous knowledge really put to practice by all peoples around the world for the sake of life, really.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I want to again thank you, all of you, for joining us today. And for you out there, just remember that you have a seat at this table. Stay in touch with us. This festival, RNCI Red Nation International Film Festival, is your festival. So you make it happen. And so I want to thank you again. And we're going to close. And all of you have a fantastic weekend. And while you are at home, you can all go to rednationff.com and view all the 105 films 105 films from all different indigenous filmmakers from all over the world, They're all gorgeous and they all have a different story, a different narrative. And I encourage you to go. And 35 directed by women. This is like the last 2 years that we thought we had a lot. This year we have 35. So that's pretty powerful. That's saying something. That's saying that women make movies is what that's saying.
And I saw 60 of them.
And women write. So again, thank you all, Sherry and
Thank you.
Josephina and Jennifer and Michelle and Deb. I appreciate you. I love you, and continue to create. Continue to create. Don't ever, 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 ever stop, because that's your medicine. I want to thank all of our generous sponsors. We cannot do this work without you, without the support of our sponsors, partners, and friends from all over the world with our year-round programming. This show was brought to you by these fine sponsors: the City National Bank, Mark Ridley Thomas, the Novo Foundation, Red Nation Television Network, and the Cultural Affairs of Los Angeles. And you know, we have a Frank, I'm going off script here, but I know you have it. We created a new program, and you can, it's for below the line Native people across the country. We're working with several film commissions and film offices all over the world. We've partnered with the mayor of New York, and he has us working with his team, entertainment team and media team. And we're real excited to announce this new program and initiative. And we have now developed a Native Film office here, Native Film Commission here in LA, and one in New Mexico. This is for all below the line to teach location manager, to be a grip, to be a script supervisor, PA. So this program just rolled out during this festival. And one of our partners, our lead partners, is the LMGI, the Locations Manager Guild International. And for more information on RNCI film production career training and Indigenous Film Crew Registry, email us at filmcareers@rednation.com. Sign up because we have some powerful things that we're going to be rolling out after this festival. It's very exciting what's happening. So stay connected and visit rednationff.com and see you at the movies. Bye, everyone.
Bye.